Hello, I just finished reading. Well, I didn't just finish reading. I finished reading a few days ago. Calling Bullshit. This book by Carl T. Bergstrom and Jevin D. West. Calling Bullshit: The Art of Skepticism in a Data-Driven World. And according to Sol Perlmutter, Nobel laureate, a necessary book for our times, but also just great fun. I really enjoyed this. This is one I picked up from the table in Waterstones, I think. I can't remember which Waterstones, but the world is full of bullshit. Most people don't know what they're talking about. The media pumps out bullshit on end, um, and more bullshit to cover bullshit in Britain anyway. Politicians pump out bullshit. People make shit up all the time, and that's why I think this book is important. That's why I picked it up. When I saw Calling Bullshit, I thought it's an interesting name. Are they phoning somebody called Bullshit? And then I saw The Art of Skepticism in a Data-Driven World, and it made sense. So let me read the back to you. A helpful guide to navigating a world full of doubtful claims based on spurious data, using clever anecdotes, nods to online culture, and allusions to ancient philosophy. The book tells ordinary readers how to spot nonsense, even if they are not numerical wizards. That's from The Economist. From Simon Ings at the Daily Telegraph, and I think the Daily Telegraph is basically a massive spouter of bullshit. But anyway, the numbers don't lie. Oh yes, they do. Essential reading. This book will give you the tools to swim through numerical snake oil. But it won't guard you against the fucking Telegraph, right? The Telegraph is basically for people who think they're too smart to read the Sun, but it's the same bullshit without the tits. Or the football coverage. A modern classic leaves the reader feeling a very particular kind of smarter, the empowered kind. Ooh, that's from Wired. A masterclass in how to spot bullshit, how to resist it, and how to keep it from succeeding. That's from Paul Romer, another Nobel laureate. So lots of praise from some big names there, and a big bullshitter, the Telegraph. I really enjoyed this book, and it's got some very useful techniques in it, very useful tips. In fact, I'm going to give this book a 10 out of 10, by the way. Not, not the most fun thing on earth to read. Not very supersonically plot driven. There's no murder or sex in it, if that's your kind of thing. But as far as a book on data goes, really, oh my god, I'm still flicking through the bibliography. Yeah, so these guys did their research. And let me just flick through and open on a page, because from memory, some of the things they cover is how biases can affect, even amongst scientists, not just amongst all the other bullshitters, but even amongst scientists, biases, for example, selection bias can massively affect what appears to be true, or what people can try and convince you is true. Also, a useful thing they point out in here is that just because somebody makes a false claim, it's not necessarily because they're evil. It's probably just because they're incompetent or uninformed, or don't know how to use data, or are easily fooled because they don't have a good bullshit detection device. You can get a few of those in here. Bullshit detection devices. They didn't come up with that phrase, I did. But let me just flick through. If I look at the contents, it will give me a good idea. Right, bullshit everywhere. Okay, chapter 1. Medium, message, and misinformation. The nature of bullshit, causality. Causality, right? You cannot prove causality. This is something, this now irrelevant, hopefully forever, unflushable pinstripe turd. Rees Moggs would love to say, whenever somebody pointed out on radio or on TV or in life, I imagine, that something he or his government had done or his cabinet had done which had caused a disaster. No, wait, you cannot say it caused it. Yeah, we know that, but you're still wrong. You're a wanker. Numbers and nonsense, selection bias, data visualization. So selection bias could be, for example, you have used the correct methods to come to a conclusion, but you used the correct methods on shitty data. You selected data that was going to support your hypothesis anyway. And you probably know that, right, intuitively, but when you read about it, it's like, wow, somebody turned the light on. Yeah, no, that really makes sense now. Data visualization was a good one. So one thing that's really important here is when you're looking at graphs, look where the axes go. Do they go all the way to 0? If not, why not? Because if you start a graph, say, at 80 to 100, rather than going from 0 to 100, the actual data presented will be the same. But because of the way it looks visually, it conveys a completely different message. And then there was one of these climate change deniers who said everybody's going on about climate change, but actually it's hardly changed at all because he'd taken the data for whatever it was, temperatures or something, right? And he'd spread it over about 100 years, so it looks like this. So there's no change whatsoever. But then somebody else said, hang on, this is the same graph, they zoomed in, and it's like this. Yeah? So it's just like if you look at a person from an aeroplane, they look like an ant, but they're not actually an ant, are they? They're a human being. Okay, so you've got to be careful about that. Look out for where the axes end. Are they a complete axis going from 0 upwards? And this is a classic as well. I think it was Reuters presented something about how crime statistics changed, or how number of crimes changed after the introduction of a law which allowed lethal force. So if somebody, this is in the States of course, where you can buy a gun easier than you can buy a fucking pen, right? I wonder why we shoot so many people. Because you got a gun for Christmas when you were 10, you retard. So the person had taken the graph, and it said basically, this is what happened to violent crimes and robberies and everything after we approved the law to let people use lethal force. They shoot somebody to stop them from the crime, and it went like this. But actually, if you paid attention, the data had been presented upside down. so violent crime crimes actually went like this, not like this. But you see the data, and visually, boom, you think, oh, everyone should have a gun because it reduces crime. Now that one really should have not got past anybody with common sense, but culture does funny things, And there are these people called the NRA in America. Anyway, we'll stop there on that point. Then there's another really good thing in here called using something let's see, I'm going to try and find it. I'm going to flick through quickly. Oh, here we go. Use reductio ad absurdum. What does that mean? If somebody presents a graph and it makes a claim based on that graph, then basically if you just take the lines that go through the data points on that graph to their end point, and the end point suggested is completely ridiculous, then their claim is also probably completely ridiculous. And there's an example in here of somebody who said, based on recent data, by this date in the future, women will be running the 100 meters in 8 seconds because women's sprinting times are increasing faster than men's sprinting times, right? As somebody said, yeah, but based on your data, that means in about 200 years, women will be running the 100 meters in less than a second. It's obviously impossible. Therefore, claims based on that logic just don't make sense. All right, you have to take into account facts like there are limitations to what a human being can achieve. All right, so don't use linear reasoning off into the future. Don't think, oh my God, yesterday I did 10 push-ups and a week later I did 20 push-ups, so that means every week I can double my push-ups. Of course you can't, because that means eventually you have to do like 1 million push-ups, which is impossible, right? There's so much good stuff in here. I feel like I'm just kind of reaching into a goodie bag like this and grabbing points out. There's so many I'm missing, but there is really so much good stuff in here. I'm tempted just to flick this open. Ah, here we go, look. The graph's about crime falling. Right, so yeah, that one's upside down. Okay, so really, really, really good. That's the data visualization chapter here, and I've actually highlighted what I was saying earlier. Never assume malice or mendacity. Mendacity is what politicians do, basically spew bullshit, right? Not telling the truth. Never assume malice or mendacity when incompetence is a sufficient explanation, and never assume incompetence when a reasonable mistake can explain things. It talks about the different types of graphs. Or data presentation, data visualizations, and ones that are really bad, that don't really do the data itself justice or communicate in a useful way, they're called ducks. And they're called ducks mainly because of this building here, which is a giant duck, which used to be a store that sold eggs. Anyway, that's a different story. See, lots of very interesting stories in here that actually serve to make the point. Then it's about how to, the shortcomings of artificial intelligence, because artificial intelligence, one of the most useful artificial intelligence programs in the States is actually a mail sorting one, and it's been trained using a good data set of people's handwriting. So it can actually sort much faster than a human being can, and without arrest, it sorts mail into boxes or sections or I don't know, bags, so they can be delivered to certain postal or zip codes in the States. And the ones it can't do, they go to human beings, and it saves millions, right? And then there's all this stuff about the use of numbers. So if someone says, "Oh, 70 million was wasted on this," what is the percentage? 70 million of what? And how does it compare to the case they're talking about here is food stamps. So it's something like so many billions of dollars are put into food stamps and 70 million of it goes to fraud. Well, actually, if you look at it as a percentage basis, it's not going to be fraud. It's just going to be, errors can account for it because it's less than 1%. Whereas you compare that to the theft that happens in most shops, which is 1 to 3%. So it's tiny. So it's not really fraud. But, if you're one of these people who thinks that there should be no taxes for the rich only, poor people have to pay taxes. Otherwise, how will we keep the roads, nice and smooth for my sports car or whatever? So, great book. Read the book. At the end, it tells you how to refute bullshit. And a good one is basically just make a counter argument. Because if some people say A is always B, then if you can find one example where it isn't, then, well, look, it can't be the case. A is always B and therefore C. Well, that can't be the case because there's an example of A not being B. But you don't do it in an arsehole, I'm right and you're wrong way. Well, not if you want people to actually listen and you don't want them to think, just what bastard. And then they introduce something between a person who just wants to be right and belittle another person on technicalities and the person who actually wants to call out bullshit. Why is calling out bullshit important? Because bullshit is dangerous. Not just because you can slip on it and it smells. Bullshit is basically what's allowed Brexit. Even Grimsby, this town in the UK where there was a bigger percentage of people voting for Brexit than anywhere else, they are now suffering like nobody. They bought all the bullshit. You speak to them. There's a program, something from The Guardian, where a guy went around and talked to the people who voted Brexit. They said, well, it's all lies, isn't it? It's all lies. Everything was a lie. Yeah, our lives have been ruined. Our business has been ruined. Everything was a lie. All the things they told us about Brexit was bullshit. How did you not see that in the first place? But, it is what it is. And then you had Nigel fucking Farage going down the Thames with a flotilla of boats behind him. We're going to take back our waters. And now the British fishing industry is fucking dead. So he's off somewhere else peddling some more bullshit. Oh, I told you, didn't I? He's on some Murdoch-owned TV show, Talk TV, going on. No, I was speaking to someone else going on about how all these crimes were committed today by immigrants. And there were 100 times as many crimes, more violent, committed by white people who were born in the UK. But you mustn't mention that. Yeah, motherfuckers. Bad word. All right, I have to calm down. I have to go. Brilliant book. Read it. Very good. If you want to be informed, if you want to remain ignorant, then don't read it because it might upset you. But even if you want to remain ignorant, it might make you laugh. It's really, really good. I definitely recommend it. That is Calling Bullshit, The Art of Skepticism in a Data-Driven World by Carl T. Bergstrom and Jevin D. West. This, like Empire, the last book I read, well, not the last book I read, but the last book I reviewed on here, is definitely worth a second read, maybe a third read. So it'll go on the bookshelf probably for 6 months or so, then I'll read it again. All right, hope you enjoyed that.